Marcus Aurelius Varro stood at the observation deck of the imperial palace, watching the three moons of Nova Roma rise over the marble spires of the capital city. The planet had been terraformed 500 years ago by the first human colonists who had fled Earth during the Great Exodus. They had built an empire among the stars that now stretched across 40 systems, and they had modeled it after the greatest civilization old Earth had ever known. The Galactic Roman Empire was humanity's answer to the countless alien species who had doubted their ability to survive in the cold void of space. The senator pulled his purple-trimmed toga closer around his shoulders as the evening wind swept across the balcony. Behind him, the sounds of the emperor's feast echoed through the crystal halls. Laughter, music, and the clinking of wine glasses filled the air. But Marcus had no appetite for celebration tonight. His mind was focused on something far more dangerous than any feast could offer. Emperor Nero Maximus had ruled the empire for 30 years with an iron fist wrapped in silk. He presented himself as a benevolent father to his people, but Marcus knew the truth. He had seen the labor camps on the Mayan moons, where political prisoners worked until their bodies gave out. He had witnessed the secret executions of anyone who dared to speak against the throne. The emperor's smile hid the soul of a tyrant, and Marcus had decided that the time had come to end his reign. The plan had taken 5 years to develop. Marcus had carefully gathered allies from among the Senate, choosing only those he knew shared his hatred for the emperor's cruelty. There were 12 of them now, each one a powerful figure in their own right. Admiral Helena Cassius controlled the Third Fleet. General Titus Brutus commanded the elite Praetorian Guard units on the Outer Rim. Senator Livia Cornelia held influence over the agricultural worlds that fed the empire. Together, they formed a conspiracy that could shake the very foundations of Nova Roma. But tonight, everything had changed. Marcus had received a message just hours before the feast began. The message came from an anonymous source, and it contained only 4 words that had turned his blood to ice. Someone within his circle was a traitor. Marcus turned away from the moons and walked back into the feast hall. The room was enormous, its ceiling painted with scenes of humanity's greatest victories against the alien empires that had once threatened to destroy them. The Vorthan War, the Battle of Proxima, the Siege of the Crystalline Nebula. These were the moments that had proven humanity's worth among the stars, and they served as constant reminders of what the human spirit could achieve when pushed to its limits. The emperor sat on his golden throne at the far end of the hall, surrounded by his personal guard. He was an old man now, his hair turned silver and his face lined with age, but his eyes remained sharp and cruel. Those eyes found Marcus as he entered the room, and the emperor raised his wine glass in greeting. Marcus returned the gesture with a smile he did not feel. He had learned long ago how to hide his true emotions behind a mask of loyalty. Every senator in this room had learned the same skill. It was the only way to survive in the emperor's court, where a single wrong word could mean death for entire families. He made his way through the crowd, exchanging pleasantries with nobles and merchants who sought his favor. Marcus Varro was known throughout the empire as one of the wealthiest men in the Senate. His family had made their fortune in starship manufacturing, and their vessels now formed the backbone of the imperial navy. This wealth had protected him so far, but he knew it would not save him if the emperor discovered his plans. Admiral Helena Cassius stood near one of the great pillars that supported the ceiling. She was a tall woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen more battles than most soldiers could imagine. She had earned her rank through skill and courage, not through political games. Marcus trusted her more than almost anyone else in the conspiracy. He approached her casually, taking a glass of wine from a passing servant. They stood together in silence for a moment, watching the dancers who performed in the center of the hall. Helena spoke without looking at him. Her voice was barely above a whisper. She told him that she had received the same message. Someone among them was feeding information to the emperor's spies. If they did not find the traitor soon, they would all face execution before the month ended. Marcus nodded slightly. He had suspected as much. The Emperor's intelligence network was vast and efficient. It was led by a man named Castor, who had built a reputation for extracting confessions from even the most stubborn prisoners. If Castor had learned about their conspiracy, it was only a matter of time before he gathered enough evidence to move against them. The question was how much the traitor had revealed. Did the Emperor know everything, or only fragments of their plan? Was this feast a trap designed to lull them into a false sense of security? Marcus examined the faces of the guards stationed around the room. They seemed relaxed, their weapons holstered at their sides. If the Emperor planned to arrest them tonight, surely the guards would be more alert. Helena suggested they move forward with their plan immediately. Waiting only gave the traitor more time to betray them. They had enough forces in position to strike within the week. The Third Fleet could blockade the planet while the Praetorian units loyal to General Brutus seized the palace. Marcus considered her words carefully. She was right that delay was dangerous, but moving too quickly carried its own risks. If they struck before all their pieces were in place, the Emperor's loyal forces might crush them. The rebellion would fail, and humanity would remain under the tyrant's heel for another generation. He told Helena to send word to their allies. They would meet in 3 days at the abandoned temple on the moon of Secundus. There, they would decide how to proceed and hopefully identify the traitor among them. The feast continued for several more hours. Marcus played his role perfectly, laughing at the Emperor's jokes and praising his wisdom. When Nero called him forward to discuss trade agreements with the outer colonies, Marcus responded with enthusiasm and intelligence. He could feel the Emperor studying him, searching for any sign of deception. But Marcus had been trained from birth to navigate the deadly waters of imperial politics. His mask did not slip even once. Finally, the feast ended and the guests began to depart. Marcus returned to his estate on the outskirts of the capital, where his wife Aurelia waited for him. She was the only person outside the conspiracy who knew the truth about his intentions. Aurelia had lost her brother to the Emperor's purges 10 years ago, executed for the crime of writing poetry that questioned the regime. She supported Marcus completely, even knowing the danger it placed their family in. That night, Marcus could not sleep. He lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling and running through every conversation he had held with his fellow conspirators. Which one of them had turned? Was it Admiral Helena using the message about a traitor to cover her own betrayal? Was it General Brutus, whose family had served the imperial throne for generations? Was it Senator Livia, whose fortune depended on trade agreements the Emperor controlled? The answer came to him 2 days later, delivered by a servant who had been bribed to spy on the palace. The Emperor's intelligence chief, Castor, had been seen meeting privately with one of the conspirators. The servant had not heard what was said, but he had seen enough to identify the traitor beyond any doubt. Marcus felt his heart sink when he learned the name. It was Senator Gaius Tertius, a young man Marcus had personally recruited into the conspiracy. Gaius had seemed so passionate about freedom, so eager to see the tyranny ended. But apparently, that passion had been nothing more than an act designed to infiltrate their group and report their plans to the Emperor. The meeting on Secundus took place as planned. Marcus arrived first, followed by Admiral Helena and General Brutus. The others came in small groups to avoid drawing attention. The abandoned temple stood on a cliff overlooking a vast desert, its ancient stones carved with symbols from old Earth religions that humanity had carried across the stars. When all 12 conspirators had gathered, Marcus stood before them and revealed what he had learned. He watched Gaius carefully as he spoke, looking for any sign of guilt or fear. But the young senator's face remained calm, even sympathetic. He was either innocent or he was a better actor than Marcus had given him credit for. Gaius denied the accusation immediately. He claimed that the servant must have been mistaken, or that he had been meeting with Castor for some innocent purpose. But the others were not convinced. General Brutus stepped forward and placed his hand on his sword. Marcus raised his hand to stop him. They could not simply execute Gaius based on one servant's testimony. They needed proof, and they needed to know exactly how much information Gaius had given to the emperor. If they killed him now, they would never learn the full extent of the damage. Helena agreed with Marcus. She suggested they proceed with the plan, but with modifications that Gaius did not know about. If the emperor's forces moved to counter them based on the original plan, it would prove Gaius was the traitor. If not, perhaps he was innocent after all. They spent the next several hours revising their strategy. The new plan was more complex, more dangerous, but it also accounted for the possibility of betrayal. Instead of a direct assault on the palace, they would first trigger a series of distractions across the empire, riots on the outer worlds, a manufactured crisis in the grain supply, a diplomatic incident with the Vorthan Confederacy that would force the emperor to divide his attention. While chaos spread throughout the empire, Marcus would request a private audience with the emperor to discuss solutions to the various problems. During this meeting, he would assassinate Nero with a neural disruptor hidden in his Senate ring. The weapon was small enough to pass through the palace security scanners and deadly enough to kill instantly at close range. It was a desperate plan, and Marcus knew he might not survive it. But he was willing to sacrifice his own life if it meant freedom for humanity. The empire deserved better than a tyrant, and someone had to be willing to take the risk. 1 week later, the distractions began. Reports flooded into the capital about food shortages on the agricultural worlds, labor strikes on the mining moons, and Vorthan warships gathering near the border. The emperor summoned his advisors to endless meetings, his face growing more concerned with each passing day. Marcus requested his audience on the 3rd day of the crisis. The emperor agreed immediately, eager to hear the senator's thoughts on how to resolve the growing problems. Marcus entered the throne room alone, having passed through 3 separate security checkpoints without incident. The neural disruptor remained hidden in his ring, undetected. The emperor sat on his throne, looking tired and old. For a moment, Marcus almost felt sorry for him. But then he remembered the labor camps, the executions, the countless lives destroyed by this man's cruelty. His resolve hardened, and he approached the throne with steady steps. They discussed the various crises facing the empire. Marcus offered solutions and suggestions, playing his role one final time. The emperor listened carefully, occasionally asking questions or requesting clarification. Finally, he seemed satisfied and rose from his throne to shake Marcus's hand. Marcus reached out and grasped the emperor's palm. He activated the neural disruptor with a subtle movement of his finger. The weapon discharged silently, sending a surge of energy directly into the emperor's nervous system. Nero Maximus, ruler of the galactic Rama Empire, collapsed without a sound. He was dead before he hit the floor. Marcus stood over the body of the tyrant, his heart pounding in his chest. He had done it. The emperor was dead, and humanity was finally free from his reign. He activated his communication device and sent a single word to his allies scattered across the empire: victory. The revolution that followed was swift and relatively bloodless. Admiral Helena's fleet secured the orbital platforms, while General Brutus led his troops into the palace to arrest the emperor's most loyal supporters. By nightfall, the capital was under the conspirators' control, and Marcus Varro stood before the Senate to announce the formation of a new government. He did not seek the throne for himself. Instead, he proposed the restoration of the old republic, with power shared among the Senate and the people. The proposal was accepted unanimously, and for the first time in generations, humanity's greatest civilization began its journey toward true freedom. The traitor Gaius was captured trying to flee the planet. Under questioning, he revealed that he had indeed been working for the emperor, but he had only managed to relay fragments of the original plan before the conspirators changed their strategy. His betrayal had nearly destroyed them, but in the end, it had only made them stronger. Marcus returned to his estate that evening to find Aurelia waiting for him on the balcony where their story had begun. She embraced him without words, and together they watched the three moons rise over a new Nova Roma. The future was uncertain, full of challenges and dangers that no one could predict. But for the first time in 30 years, that future belonged to the people. Humanity had proven once again that no tyrant could hold them down forever. Across the galaxy, alien species watched the revolution unfold and wondered at the strange creatures who had risen from a tiny blue planet to challenge the stars themselves. They had built empires and torn them down. They had fought wars and forged peace. They had shown courage in the face of certain death and compassion even for those who had wronged them. This was the nature of humanity. This was their greatest strength. And as Marcus Aurelius Varro looked up at the stars that night, he knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, his species would face them together.